Happy Monday, everybody. Thanks for checking in to our latest Trade to Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales, as usual. Hope you all had a great weekend. You wanted it? Well, you've got it. So we're going to bring in the president of AYR Wellness, George DeNardo, in just a moment to get a better idea on where the direction of this company is headed. His skill sets is all about execution, which we all know this industry is at a pivotal moment, and it's going to be all about execution for companies here in 2025. As well, a new weekly segment we're kicking off with Michael Bronstein from ATACH this week. We're going to find out what this company exactly focuses on, and really all about cannabis reform and cannabis and the hemp industry as we go full into detail with Michael. Lots to share, including developments that's going on in Pennsylvania as well. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Monday. Good to see you. Happy Monday.
It's great. Another day in paradise. We got trade war ripping. Cannabis stocks were green today. Crypto's getting kicked in the teeth. But yeah, it's a good Monday. We're back again and rolling with the punches.
Well, according to Peter Navarro from 2 hours ago, he says it's more of a drug war and not a trade war, and that Canada needs to understand that when it comes to these tariffs right now. He may have a point because, as reading last week, there's only 1% of illegal immigrants in the U.S. come from the Canadian border, but as much as 80% of terrorist groups that are in the U.S. are from that Canadian border. So there might be something valid there, but long story short, I won't be buying an American orange juice anytime soon based on some of these tariffs that could.
We got plenty in Florida. I will. I'll UPS it to you in a couple packages if you'd like that. We can smuggle you up some OJ.
How about you just sponsor me and I'll move to Florida and we'll do that. How's that sound?
Well, yeah, it'll be good.
Well, let's welcome in our first up guest here today. Newly appointed president of AYR Wellness. Hopefully he can endorse me as well and sponsor me and I can get to the U.S. How are you? George DeNardo, nice to meet you. How are things?
Things are going well. Great to meet you guys.
Yeah. So, the announcement was made last week. I think it was welcoming news because I know a lot of investors out there right now just want to get look, let's face it. This is a company that people really want to win and succeed. When we look back at the HHS memo back in September of 2023, this was a stock that absolutely ripped based on some reform news. And with that, a lot of retail investors very interested in this company. Didn't get the news that we wanted back 60, 90 days ago regarding Amendment 3 in Florida. So with that, it's all about execution. And really what we're hearing more and more, in this industry, it's squeezing basically profit in every single angle of the business. And your interim CEO, Steve Cohen, has highlighted just, your overall skills based on execution. So with that, when we look at 2025 and execution, what is your first priorities for this company heading in as new president of it?
Well, I mean, I started with AYR in November of last year, and we really built a phenomenal foundation. And really on 2025 is really the story of execution of that. David Goebert used to talk about our brand portfolio. We've consolidated that down. We've concentrated on quality improvements from the garden all the way through our manufactured goods. And I'm looking forward to seeing the leaders really execute on that foundation that we built all of 2024.
Go ahead, Anthony.
You have one of the more impressive footprints throughout amongst the MSOs with where you're situated right now. Three of your major markets are yet to flip to adult use. That being Florida, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. I want to start with Florida. I know there was an investment made there in indoor grow ahead of Amendment 3. We didn't get Amendment 3. The Florida market's going to look, I do think, fundamentally different, let's say at the end of this year. How are things progressing with that incremental grow that's coming online from an indoor standpoint? And how are you looking at Florida strategically from an operations perspective to, let's say, navigate this medical market in the quarters to come?
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at the Florida market, I mean, the amount of dispensaries that has increased throughout 2024 has been phenomenal. And Ocala is really a key asset that we're really looking forward to in 2025. That indoor grow quality, working with the cultivation leaders on getting the right genetics selected. It's a gap in our portfolio that we currently have right now. And I'm looking forward to getting that up. We do anticipate harvest and product availability towards the end of Q3. Walked through the facility several times. It's progressing very nicely. So it's an exciting addition to really Florida AYR. and really for the patients to get that product out there.
And then as far as Florida goes from an ops perspective, are you looking to see any trends in pricing, let's say maybe price compression over the next year or two? Or do you think things are kind of going to stay status quo where they are and everybody will be able to eat as far as serving the consumer?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, price compression has been the story of every market in cannabis. So it's unavoidable. What we're focusing on is really our manufacturing efficiencies that we can get in order to make sure that we can support that price compression over the next year, and really focusing in on the product quality and the product brands that we can provide out to the patients, to really try to minimize some of that.
And then how are you looking at Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania is one of the adult use markets that are potential adult use conversions that now investors are looking towards. A lot of people are looking towards that market to maybe flip, let's say in 2025, as we're seeing some, I guess, positive momentum out of Harrisburg and rhetoric from Governor Shapiro. That's another potential large market, let's say, in the portfolio. How are you looking at that?
I mean, the same way as everyone else. We have a phenomenal retail footprint and phenomenal leaders within each of the stores. And Julie Winter has done a phenomenal job really leading multiple markets for us. So we're excited about the potential. We're preparing for it. And we're doing everything that we can from an operational perspective to make sure that we're ready if it does go our way.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Julie Winter, I think her sister's best of all, if I'm correct. But yeah, she had a great track record. But I've interviewed her years ago. Great person, to say the least. But when you look at it, like going back to what I said, what's your first priority? What do you think is the biggest hurdle that you need to focus on here in 2025? When you talk about execution, specifically in manufacturing, maybe go more into detail as to what you think, if there's anything that needs to change or from an operation efficiency standpoint needs to improve on.
Well, I mean, so me being named president, what I'm trying to do right now is bring both the revenue side of the business and the operational all underneath one umbrella, and create that collaboration where we're really tracking what our sell-through is, what our brand penetration is, and really making sure that we're able to execute uniformly as a leadership team on providing all the products to each market that we're allowed underneath the regulations. Traditionally it was back of house and front of house. By creating that uniformity, I think we have some additional levers for velocity that we can have in 2025.
Yeah.
Now, how does that, or go ahead, Chad.
I was going to say, no, finish your thought, but I was going to mention just real quick. Was it 2018 that you joined AYR Wellness? When was it?
2018, I joined Columbia Care, or the Cannabis company. And I started really developing their Pennsylvania retail locations. And then it morphed over the years to handling the East Coast and Midwest, both front of house revenue driving, as well as back of house supply chain, cultivation, and manufacturing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, operations is obviously one of the harder disciplines in business to do. You have quite a large business, and cannabis adds another layer of complexity onto that when you look at every market potentially as its own business. How heavy of a lift is it to get the front of house and back of house to be speaking synergistically to create this streamlined effect that you had alluded to?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an evolution since I joined AYR. So, I mean, I was controlling the back of house and working with Jamie Mendola and Julie Winter really on the front of house. This is a formality of creating that uniformity underneath a single umbrella for accountability. But, again, we have phenomenal leaders at AYR. It's not like I'm new to AYR. I've been working with them for the past 14 months. So we all had a vision, and we continue to talk about it in 2024 on how it would evolve. So I think the alignment between all of us is extremely strong. So it's not a significant lift in 2025. I'm building on that foundation that we did in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the ways we closed out 2024 was we got Ohio online.
Yes.
Come 2025, we're starting to hearing some whispers of, let's say, price compression. I know that we haven't gotten the rules and regs that we wanted for a true adult use market. And we even got a potential amendment to the framework with, let's say, raising taxes, which I don't think will pass, but it's just adding to the optics. Yeah. How is Ohio progressing, and is it meeting your expectations up until now, as far as, let's say, sales growth and stability in that market since conversion?
Yeah, I mean, in Q3, we demonstrated, a 2x growth from the medical market. It's been a very good market to us. I think, when you evaluate Ohio, right now we currently have 3 stores. By the end of the year, we expect to have 8 stores. As these additional dispensaries come online, I did see the article about the price compression, and we're all seeing it. Like I said earlier on, every market sees it. But I think as these additional dispensaries come on, that supply-demand curve is going to shift a little, and we're going to see the stabilization within the pricing. Right now, what we're focused on is making sure that we're keeping our genetics fresh. We're doing a lot of product innovation, leaning into our brand strategy, and then just making sure that we can address the market needs as it grows.
Yeah.
And I think for context, just for everybody that's watching, I do mention price compression in Ohio. I think it needs to be said that it's a little bit nuanced, as the bar was set very high in Ohio. And from a pricing perspective, I think it was the highest price market in the United States, if I'm not correct, when it flipped. So when I'm talking about price compression, let's not go to like what Michigan is doing right now. Ohio is a healthy market still, with very, very healthy pricing.
Opposite ends of the spectrum when you look at those bordering states, is it not?
Yeah,
it is. And one thing you have to keep in mind too is we're still underneath a medical market from a marketing and advertising. So once new rules go in place, I do see additional growth just from that as well. So there's a couple of really levers that are going to be pulled very shortly that should increase the Ohio market.
Yeah. Before we start recording, we were talking behind the scenes. You think it's a big opportunity. Of course it is, in the state of Pennsylvania, if they pass adult use. You don't believe it's going to be like Maryland, but it's still going to be a very lucrative market. Do you want to elaborate on what you meant by that?
Yeah. I mean, so when you take a look at Pennsylvania, I mean, you already have New Jersey, you have New York. I mean, usually when a state flips from adult use, you don't have bordering states that are adult use. Right. So given that PA is really, there's a bunch of AU markets that are in parallel to it. I do expect it more to be like an Ohio market than a Maryland. I think Maryland is unprecedented on what that demonstrated when they flipped. So you got to be a little bit more conservative. But again, I'm really looking forward to the possibility of Pennsylvania going adult use. I believe there is a lot of untapped market. I mean, anyone who drives across the state of Pennsylvania, you realize the size of it as you're driving across. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's a big state, that's for sure.
And then you had mentioned the bordering states for PA, obviously one being New York. You guys won an RO license there as of recent. I know that was announced. What's it going to take to build out your presence in New York from a CapEx perspective, and what is the strategy to enter New York? Because obviously it's gotten off on rocky footing. We see stabilization and the sales are starting to grow now. So it is going to become one of the preeminent markets in the States to be operating in down the road.
Yeah, I mean, so we won an RO license underneath Amethyst Health. It's a partnership between Black Star Wellness and AYR. And we're working with our partners right now on really taking a look at retail sites and how we can build that up. So right now we're still in strategy phase, but we look forward to entering the market. I mean, New York did start off pretty rocky, but it is New York, and I do expect it to rebound over the next couple of years. So we look forward to that market.
Yeah. How
from
much
strategy? Or go ahead, Chad.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say, from a strategy and ops perspective, is New York one of those markets where it is going to be advantageous to be vertical, or do you think strategically it's more so like a retail based market and let the verticality, I guess, stay outside for the time being?
Well, I mean, when you look at the vertical nature of the license, I think it's helpful. But when you take a look at the brands, I think New York is a market that you could do a true hub and spoke. where you can work with all the partners out there, third-party brands, on making sure that you're utilizing your facility the best that you can. But it is a retail market, right? It's the way they're handing out licenses. It's making sure that you're able to address the customer needs.
Let's switch now. I know back in September, your former CEO, David Goebert, left the company. It's now been, 5 months since that happened. So for many investors out there wondering where this sits, is there an update? Will there a CEO be named? Of course, there's going to be eventually. But, the big question is that some people have reached out to us is, why is it taking so long? What's your response to that?
Well, I think as a company, we really had to address what I would call the operational leadership team. And when you're trying to attract a CEO, and we hired a search firm for it, you want to make sure that they have a stable leadership team to attract the best out there. And I know the board of directors is working very diligently with our search firm. I believe they're getting close. And I look forward to their decision on who the CEO is going to be.
Well, I find it interesting just because your background, it's, I think what we're seeing more and more in this space, and you probably agree with this, Anthony, is that people that are being appointed to new executives with these companies, like the background and experience within the space, we kind of went outside of cannabis. Some companies did that in the past, but is that something that you guys would probably look to as far as a new CEO, that someone has a deep understanding and background and experience already in the cannabis industry?
Well, I mean, there's values to both cannabis experience and non-cannabis experience. I think where the board is doing a really good job of filtering through the candidates, both in the space and outside the space, to make sure that we address the needs of the company going forward.
Yeah, of course. I get it. I hate asking this question, but I got to ask it. Trump administration. Yes, we're doing what we can. Businesses, they'll say, yes, we don't worry about what's going on in DC, but let's not kid ourselves. If we got some sort of reform, as I said, a lot of people view this stock and this company as big reward, if something were to happen. What's your thoughts on this new Trump administration? Do you feel differently with this administration compared to what we had in the last 4 years?
I do. There's a lot more talk about cannabis among those going for positions and not. I mean, Trump, he supported Amendment 3 in Florida. So there's a more confidence in the Trump administration than the Biden administration. But I will also give you the canned answer of I'm not relying on anything, because I want to make sure operationally we're sound with or without movement. I've been in this industry since 2018. I will celebrate any time that we could get movement from the federal government, but I'm not relying on it.
Yeah. What do you think? Look, we still do what we do every single week hosting this podcast because we believe that there are brighter days ahead for this industry. You've been involved in 2018. You've seen a lot of change. How would you compare, I guess, where we are now? Have you seen, stuff like this before where there's uncertainty involving the industry, but we've gotten through it in some ways? But how would you best describe where you think this industry is going moving forward with this new administration? But even on top of that, just with the overall growth and normalization of the industry amongst the American citizens across the country?
Look, I think from people, the demographics adopting cannabis, I mean, you see all the stories about alcohol consumption down, cannabis consumption up, where in 2018, it was still something that nobody spoke about, or, they uttered it underneath their breath. So it's come a long way, but with any new industry, it takes years to evolve. I think we're closer than ever. So I'm optimistic. I really am.
Can only look at it that way if you're still involved in this space and want to succeed, right? But here we are. We did have somebody reach out to us. They said, ask about Virginia. Gary Ash, if you want, is there something specifically about Virginia you wanted to ask? Make sure to follow up with that question. But saying that, did you want to highlight anything regarding Virginia, George?
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about Virginia. We are working with the regulators. I mean, look, that HSA zone has had some troubles, to say the least, over the years. So we're working with the regulators on how quickly we can move to make sure that we can start operations there and really get the products out to the patients and customers of Virginia. where it is a key market for us, and we're really looking forward to it.
Okay. Good to know. Listen, always appreciate speaking to, some of the most notable companies in the space, and that's a big position for you to be appointed. And listen, nothing but the best of luck for you moving forward. I know there's a lot of investors that are rooting for you, but please keep in touch. Thank you for checking in. Tell Mr. Rob Vadisco I say hi, and let's keep in touch. Okay, George?
Fantastic. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks,
Take
George.
care.
All right. Take care.
Yep. Big company that we all know about, big following to say the least. But yeah, you know what?
There are a lot of key markets, a lot of key markets, 3 key markets to flip with adult use. It's an interesting story, especially going into this year.
Yeah, that's for sure. One thing real quick, and I got to buy some time here, is we're supposed to bring in Michael Bronstein, and I don't think I sent him the link just quite yet. So I will send him the podcast link.
That would help.
Yes.
By the way, for everybody that follows me on Twitter, if I ever post anything that seems like it's satire, it's probably satire. I posted on 4:30 on Friday that Trump was putting tariffs on cannabis imports from Canada. We don't import cannabis from Canada. There's a very small amount that is imported for research purposes. It's infinitesimal. And that was purely satire in aftermarket hours, not meant to be serious.
Yeah.
For everybody that was following at home.
Dan D. Buds, that's a good question. How does company manage current and upcoming debt? That's more of a question for a CEO. So we'll keep you posted. That's not a question that George is going to answer, because his more is based on execution. And
George's role is purely ops, talking about leverage and debt. Once there's a new CEO appointed from AYR, I'm sure we'll have him on. And one of the first things that we'll address is what the leverage and debt position looks like. I know that they've retired it all until I think December 2027 for the most part. But if they're going to build out Virginia, and they're going to build out New York, I'm going to assume that's not going to be leveraging cash flow from operations, and there would have to be some debt associated there. So yeah, talking about the debt and the leverage, I think, is a very important part of the story. It's just time, place, and personnel on who to carry out that conversation with.
It's amazing how people can misunderstand a tweet, or when it comes to online or a text message, like, or we're covering.
They don't exist. We don't import cannabis from Canada.
I just find it humorous that people still, that follow this space inside and out, think that we're shipping weed from Canada down to the U.S. Like, you can't cross state lines, let alone a federal border.
The main thing was this, and I didn't think about it before I tweeted it. Trump is crazy enough to say something like that.
Yeah.
Not knowing what he's talking about. So
Happy Burner writes, that's not what was said. What was said, Happy? You said Trump said some crazy shit. Exactly.
I said Donald Trump announced tariffs on Canadian cannabis imports to the United States.
Right. It is what it is. All we can say is that let's just have some.
And this was while he was signing the executive orders, I think, for the tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Yeah, and no, Happy Burner is great. He's always here, so we appreciate you watching and
love Happy Burner
and following along.
Yeah. How could you not like a guy named Happy, right?
Yeah.
All right. It is now time for our new weekly segment.
I'm also pretty sure I'm pretty sure. Oh shit! I just cut you off. I'm pretty sure his profile picture is also Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
But without further ado,
I'll
shut up.
I'm very happy to announce that every Monday during our live stream at 4:00, we're going to be doing a segment with ATACH, which is the American Trade Association of Cannabis and Hemp. And with that, let's welcome in their president back to the podcast, Mr. Michael Bronstein. First segment that we're doing this. Everyone needs to know exactly what we're going to be doing here this week. But first off, before we get into the details of what we're going to be accomplishing, how are you? Good to see you.
It is great to see you. And I am excited to be back on the show and super excited for all the great work that we have done together and we are going to continue to do together.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Look, I think people need to understand, like, the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp's been around for 10 plus years, excuse me. When we attended some of your events in Vegas, you attract some of the biggest names in the cannabis space for a lot of your events. You're advocating on behalf of the industry when it comes to cannabis reform, things to do with banking, both on a federal and state level. I think people have a good understanding of knowing who you are based on some of the appearances that you've had on our live stream before in the past. But to kind of set the stage first, maybe give a better idea, because I think people are really interested to find out what exactly are some of the companies like yourselves doing with this new administration? What's the messaging going to be like? What are some of the questions and, I guess, hurdles that you're presented on a daily basis? But maybe give people a clear understanding of what ATACH is and what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. So we were founded in 2014. So we celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Yep.
Not long ago. And what we've done is we've been focusing on expanding, protecting, and preserving the state licensed cannabis and hemp businesses throughout the country. And our focus really has been addressing issues with state level and federal policy, especially when they conflict, and protecting the industry under what we're seeing as extreme uncertainty through advocacy at the federal level, through advocacy at the state level, and making sure that businesses have a proper regulatory environment to be operating in, one in which people can invest in, one in which really we see the promise of cannabis as an industry, because there are a lot of things that are holding us back right now. There are a lot of things that have held us back over the years. Some of the things that we fought successfully, and I think that we've come a long way as an industry, but there's still so much further to go.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, it's been 10 years. I probably right now one of the longer tenured heads of a trade association in the space. One of the things that I think, if you went back 10 years ago and you saw what the industry was today, a lot of us probably wouldn't have imagined some of the problems that we're seeing, right? We would think, okay, well, we surely would have a solution to the banking issue right now at the federal level. If you had said that to me 10 years ago, right? We probably would have thought, okay, there's some level of federal legalization that would have happened that at least would have taken away some of the state and federal conflict on it. That there would be a little bit more recognition of some of the things that we do at the federal level. And all of the wins that we've had have been extremely hard fought in this industry.
That's an understatement, right?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely an understatement. And the reality is that we have to organize. We have to organize effectively. We have to lead by example as an industry, because remember, we are highly scrutinized as the cannabis industry, and even some of the things that we don't do, we get scrutinized for as well by our adversaries. And in opening up the potential and the promise of this market, it's going to take a lot more, and it's going to take a lot of businesses and a lot of leadership. And that's one of the things that we have looked to provide to the marketplace through advocacy, is leadership on all of these different and important issues. And that's what we continue to do.
And here you are 10 years later, and I can't think of a more important time than ever when you think about the federal level and the state level. And I think a lot of people have asked these questions as to why there's been not a lot of connection as to what's going on when it comes to policy. You've got how many states now have legalized it from adult use?
Well, so here's the thing: we're counting adult use, and we've started counting different metrics on adult use too, right? So we're saying, all right, adult use is legalized cannabis, right? What do you call a Tennessee program that has legalized hemp intoxicants? So right now we're sitting at the precipice of just around 50% of the country and states that we've seen, and if you add other types of markets up, we're seeing over that, and probably about 60% of the population right now is able to purchase cannabis on a legal basis, depending on how you're defining it.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to see is we want to see it on a safe, regulated basis. Some of the things that are going on right now out in the public, if we don't have regulatory uncertainty, and I've said this forever, there isn't an investment opportunity, right? There aren't exit opportunities. There isn't growth in the industry that we want to see. And the reality is that folks who we would see get into this industry would be holding back. And we who are here know the promise of this, right? We all believe it. We've seen it. And I think that there are proof points in the market around cannabis that we're looking to recognize as an industry. And that only gets better going forward by demonstrating best practices, by meeting the consumer where they are, and also getting good regulation in place so that we can really expand the industry.
Yeah.
How much easier would your life be if there was a unified effort between hemp and cannabis as it relates to the regulatory reform in this country?
So I think that with the regulatory reform, regulations are only as good as the people who are following them and where enforcement happens.
Yeah.
So what I would say to that is there are a whole new batch of consumers that are being brought into the industry in different ways. And the reality is that some of the things that we're seeing are really problematic. When you talk about the synthetic, basically the synthetic derivative market that we see out there that, are kind of masquerading as hemp products that are not naturally based, that can be a problem from a public health and safety perspective and a consumer perspective, right? There has to be regulation. And I think that most folks understand that there has to be regulation around that. And there's a debate around what that is. I don't really view these things as two markets from a regulatory perspective. I think that they need to come under one regulator at the federal level. I think that there's a market that has developed that is a state licensed market and a state legal market, of which the principle of cannabis legalization has always stood, which needs to be protected. And I would argue that even on the hemp side of the equation, protecting state level marketplaces is extremely important, because if states have the ability to choose what it is that they want to do, it's much easier to defend those rights of which the industry exists on than not. So these markets, look, we are the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp, and we helped develop. We were here in 2014 when the first Farm Bill, the 7606 provisions of the Farm Bill were being discussed under pilot programs. We advocated on that. We advocated in the 2018 Farm Bill, and we also helped bring the first cultivars, because remember, hemp wasn't, prior to 2018, hemp was not grown in the States, or at least had to be reintroduced in a lot of different ways. We helped build a lot of that industrial hemp market on that. And what's happened since is an object lesson in being able to get at good regulation and also unintended consequences of federal law, or also misreads of it.
Right.
Look, in industry, I've said this on the show before, this industry cannot live in the Farm Bill, because if cannabis has to be renewed in the Farm Bill every 5 years, or now going on 7 years, that is not a way to ensure stability. Ensure stability in the industry to begin with. And I don't even think that the way that the Farm Bill is being read, a lot of folks read, well, states can't regulate. But what we've started to see in courts is that courts are affirming that states can regulate these products.
Yes.
And you know what? That's a good thing.
Right.
We want states to be able to regulate these products. We want states to be able to provide regulatory certainty and clarity and public health and safety around these things. And cannabis legalization, guess what? It didn't happen at the federal level. It happened at the state level, and we're having to catch the federal government up to that.
So in a lot of ways, what I'm gathering here is that you're the voice of the day-to-day operations, both in cannabis and hemp, that goes on in these states, and you're communicating this stuff to people on the federal level, among other things. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And we have a network of state associations that is the largest network of state associations in the country that we work along with on ATACH's National Council. We've helped create a state action center there where we're helping support federal activities, in order to support the industry and the market that is developing. And we also believe that grassroots change can come from this. And that's the thing that people had not put together, I think, prior to us coming along.
I think the big question a lot of people would love to know and learn is, how do both industries view each other? There's perceptions out there that, do they not like each other? Like, is that far from the truth?
So the thing that we see here is there are people who are what I would say are good actors in the industry who understand what it is that needs to be done on a go forward basis.
Yeah.
And then there are others who, quite frankly, that the industry needs to spend more time discussing and making sure that people fall into compliance. And these two industries, I think, they view each other. I think that some of them view, if you were looking at the state market industry, there are people who are operating in state markets that are outside the rules and regulations of those state markets.
Yep.
Right. And that's a problem. You need to have one regulator. You can't be selling products that are evading some of the tax regime and also some of the regulation that's put in place. Right. And then on the other side of this, there have been opportunities that have been created in states that would not likely have gone legal. But the problem is that those opportunities, people need to be honest with what it is that they're selling in these products, right? You see people, and I'm just reading the chat. People are THCO and THCP, and there are a number of these products, HHC, and some of these synthetic products have either been banned, abroad, or consumers and advocates have raised concern about them at the state level. I think what we need to do, the goal of industry really right now, is to create a pathway for federally legal natural THC.
100%.
Right? I think all of the other stuff that we see right now is part and parcel of people trying to work around a tough regulatory environment, and in some cases, skirting rules and regulations in different states that we're seeing. And the people who are going to get along in the industry are going to understand that. Right. And we have companies.
How do you do that, Michael? How do you do that, though?
I think you develop responsible best practices. I think you develop standards. We've been leading the standards discussion for the last 10 years. We signed a memorandum of understanding with ASTM International, and we have been creating industry standards through a consensus-based organization. ASTM International is one of the oldest standards bodies in the world. And we have continued to push for public health and safety because public health and safety is coin of the realm for cannabis products.
Yeah.
So we developed those standards. And remember, those standards aren't just public health and safety standards. They're actually standards for trade practice too. So we know that if a product is following these standards, that if people are certified to those standards, that it's a reliable, it's a reliable marketplace. And a hemp company can follow the standards just as much as a state regulated company can follow the standards too. And they should be following the laws of their own states.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing. And we're going to see more. I think we're seeing a lot of state level activity this year about what regulation in marketplaces that don't have them are going to be. Something like 20 states are considering bills right now. We've been active in a number of different states. And the one thing that I think people are really agreeing upon is how these products are being produced needs to be regulated.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you are in the hemp space and you look at what's going on, and that's a message, and to be sure, there are people, who are really receptive to that message, and there are people who aren't receptive to that message. The people who are receptive to this message have to know that cannabis is going to be highly scrutinized, that these products cannot do harm to consumers, and that we do need to acknowledge that there has to be regulation on it. And I'm not saying it's not going to be challenging, but we have to know what our North Star is, say what our North Star is, and lead everyone there.
But that's going to be all part of the conversation. Once we get rescheduling taking place and we start to see kind of the ball moving, there's got to be more than just an announcement that's being made. And this is where a lot of the data and information is coming in that you're doing, correct?
I think so. And look, the scheduling effort and the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduling Reform is housed at ATACH. And we've been helping lead the coordination for the scheduling campaign for the industry. It is a huge undertaking and a huge process. But if we come out with a win in that process, it will be the single biggest win for the industry, for medical patients and research.
I bet
that is accumulated up to this point. And look, I got in as a patient advocate 10 years ago, and so my views are highly influenced by the by the goodness of the product and the medical component of the product. And I think that there are a whole bunch of uses of this product that we haven't even really discovered yet, which we intend to hopefully trailblaze a path for.
From a strategy standpoint, how do you identify when to go into a state and start to work on, let's say, from a grassroots level? Is it when they bring on medical? Is it when they start to bring on adult use? Like, how do you strategically identify markets that are worth dedicating time and bandwidth to?
We look at a few different criteria as we're deciding, and we basically have 3 tiers of selection of how we're going to be involved in any type of regulation at the state level to know what type of resources that we can put on the ground. One is really who the stakeholders are on the ground and how well they are organized. That's a big criteria, right? So there's certain people that you look for, and this could be in a medical market, right? This could be in a medical turning AU market. This could also be in states that are contemplating regulation that don't have anything on the books yet, and they're looking at it. But the reality is that it doesn't happen. You do really need partners on the ground. This thing doesn't happen from just on high all the time. And as somebody who was a state level advocate for a number of years, there's certain types of stakeholders that you need, right? Like if we're arguing for medical, you need patient advocates who are really engaged. If you're arguing for adult use, you need businesses that were in the medical market a lot of the time. You need other stakeholders that are there that are ready for legalization. That are at the table. And in a lot of these states, we've had to build them from the ground up to be able to do it. And we offer different levels of support. In a couple of states, we've fully managed campaigns to go out and do it and do legalization. In others, we've brought the resources in or fundraised for it while people on the ground have been running those efforts. But the criteria almost always starts with how engaged are the people on the ground? How coordinated can they be? And do we have impact by getting involved with it?
Well, go ahead, Anthony.
I was going to say also a lot of the things that we talk about on the show as of recent are lobbying as well as PACs. How would the trade, and this might be nuanced, but how does a trade association differ from, let's say, a PAC, and how does advocacy differ from, let's say, lobbying? Because I feel like those words get conflated a lot.
They do get conflated a lot. So my background in politics, here's basically what you need. You need a trade association, which is a 501c6 organization, which we are. And by the way, the IRS, we had to fight for this because the IRS stopped allowing cannabis organizations to be 501c6 trade associations after we got certified. So we were certified. Well, as soon as we got certified, the federal government released a rule that you weren't allowed to certify organizations that were lobbying for things that were federally illegal. So in the Controlled Substances Act, right? So we were able to get certified, and then the IRS had a rule which is still on the books today, which is an unfair rule, but it's still on the books. Then you sort of need, all right, well, you have 501c4s, which are social welfare organizations, which can help lobby, campaign, get message out. And those are some of the groups that we've also been working with at the federal level. A PAC. So there are a couple different types of PACs. ATACH has a PAC that is what is called a connected PAC to the organization, where we can use hard dollar fundraising amongst our membership, and be able to raise funds for candidate campaigns. There are super PACs which spend in an unlimited fashion. That are now sort of a hallmark of campaigning, that support candidates who are running for office, not through direct support, but through advertising support and other things. And we're just, I think, starting to see good efforts off the ground, on doing things like that inside the industry. But the reality is that we need all of those things, right? Mm-hmm. We need foundations and C3s. I would argue that the industry right now, and part and parcel of it is because the industry is young, right? And also because of the federal status, it makes it hard to raise some of the amounts of money that you would need to separate those things off, right? Got it. Like if we're raising several $1 million a year, it's not tens of millions of dollars a year, which you would normally need to sort of split those things off. So it's our hope that over time that does grow, but the industry from an advocacy perspective is still also needing to organize some of these separate efforts as well. So we're involved in that, and that the advantage of ATACH being a C6 trade organization is that we can actively raise and move money around, but also we can provide member benefits to people as a trade organization, organized under the right, the right portion of the tax code.
Well, you can understand how it gets complicated sometimes. Guap writes, super PACs are better than PACs because they are super. Got it.
They are.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I'm going to ask the question. I asked this.
We need a penumbra of.
Yeah.
What do you say, I guess, is your main priority and focus? Like, I was going to ask that. I did ask it, but there's a lot of moving parts. There's not just one thing from what I'm hearing that you're focusing on, but what are some of the popular 2 or 3 things that you need to focus on this year? And how much does, I guess, your trade group change in the event rescheduling is announced?
So I think that from a pillars of legalization, those things shouldn't really change over time, right? What we advocate for and what we've been advocating for, I think, need to be a bedrock of what it is that we're doing in the future, right? If you believe that legalization is one plant, right? If you believe that there needs to be state regulated markets and the federal government needs to be brought into compliance with what the state is doing. If you believe that the day that rescheduling and federal legalization happen, that day is better going forward and not worse with what's gone on in the states. Those are the types of things that you really need to be taking aim at, and that we take aim at as an association. But look, there are core issues that we see in terms of marketplace expansion, and we've spent a lot of time, effort, energy, and dare I say treasure on this over the years. And look, we think in this upcoming year, the regulation around hemp is going to be critically important. And what happens on the synthetic THC and farm bill, that's incredibly important. We think that what happens at the state level is incredibly important on regulatory matters, but also legalization matters. We think that scheduling, which we spent a lot of time and effort on, could just fundamentally transform the industry. I mean, look at the bottom lines of what these companies will do. Capital markets, all of those things. These are things that we're intimately involved with.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit. What's the biggest headline that we get for the cannabis industry this year? And what's the biggest headline we get for the hemp industry this year?
Well, if you're gonna say a headline on both,
tune in next Monday to find out.
I think you'll find out. I do think that it is. I do think that it's probably around the farm bill that you would see a headline, or the regulation of an industry, especially the treatment of synthetics, because that's something that I think came up in both versions of the farm bill. So I do think that that's a big one, and I do think that scheduling is a big one, and I think you could very well get both headlines this year.
Okay. You talked earlier about how this needs to be regulated, and how the industry basically needs, what was the term that you used? Was it one regulator more or less that you said earlier? So how practical is that from happening?
Oh, I think it's extremely practical. I mean, how does that not happen? Right? Like when we go forward, if you look at this logically, right, it is less logical that there be 10 regulators, and more logical that there be, basically one place where it happens, right? So at the federal level, I think there's kind of going to be a thought of like, okay, like we would prefer regulation to happen at TTB, right? There are some folks who, the way that they're arguing right now, regulation would wind up more at FDA. The way alcohol is regulated, look, guys, when we campaigned, and we campaign in states, we say we want to tax and regulate like alcohol, right? Well, what did we mean by that? Well, at the federal level, what that means is it's at TTB, all right? It's at TTB, okay? And they have an MOU with FDA, the way that alcohol does, all right? And then there are provisions with how trade would happen, and a protection of the state level markets. The problem that we've seen is that people are thinking only of what happens, the small incremental change that they could get, but they're not thinking about it holistically, right? What I try to do with what our organization tries to do is think about policy from 360 degrees.
Okay.
All right. Not 90 degrees, not 180, 360 degrees. Let's figure it out. So that to me is where I think we need to be headed.
Do you think this industry mirrors very similar to what alcohol is in due time?
I think that it has to move towards where alcohol is over time. It may not be and when I say that, really what I mean is, okay, alcohol had state level markets too that were set up. It had a federal overlay. The difference that we have with alcohol is there's some level of constitutional, provisions that were put in at the end of Prohibition. How that happens coming out of cannabis prohibition at the federal level is going to determine what that market looks like. But I think what we all know is the way this is right now, it's going to change. It actually can't stay the same. right?
Correct.
So there's going to be a lot of market, really, to get ahead of the regulation. There's going to be like a lot of market, a lot of market analysis that's going to have to happen with folks and where they are, because there's some people that are building outside of that market that, that need to be accounted for. And look, we've seen this in all different types of industries. We've seen it in gaming, right?
Yeah,
we've seen it, gaming is a great example of what it is. This isn't foreign to how things are going to get regulated. So we have to get
interesting. Well, I think a lot of people are going to find this interesting too, as we start to get more and more updates weekly from a regulation standpoint and how that develops over the course of the year. And then more importantly, hemp and cannabis, how these two, industries sort of, so to speak, advance and in some ways get regulated to a certain aspect and, create better opportunities from where we're currently sitting right now. Right.
We're going to do that. We're committed to doing that. And the cannabis promise has to be realized. If we're going to realize this, all right, we're going to realize this. It's good. Look, it's going to take work, right?
Yeah, I know.
I don't think anybody knew how much work it was going to take, right? But we're going to do it, and we're going to make it. We're going to make it happen. And that's really what you have to see from an industry. We lack a sense of, and we can't do this further, right? There has to be a sense of direction. There has to be a sense of leadership, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're looking to fill the void. Because we have interests that are in the industry, right? Interests don't give you direction necessarily. Okay. You need vision and leadership in order to do things like that. And that's got to be the central tenet of advocacy. Get people along. You're not going to get everyone along, right?
No.
But if you have the right message and where this is going reasonably and where the market you want it to be, you can effectuate that change. And it's not just me that can effectuate that change. It's everybody here, right?
Yes.
So that I think is the point, is to empower people to make that change.
Yeah.
You are the change, or we are the change, kind of like we are the media now with X. So we need to start that. We need to start that mantra. By the way, the trade war is over, guys.
I saw that.
Tariffs on Canada have been postponed.
Expand for 30 days.
It was a quick surrender.
So the great trade war of 2025 is over.
But
yes, you are correct. Like we need to, like all of us, all of us effectuate that change, and nothing is going to change if we all can't come together and drive it in our own separate ways.
Yeah. It almost reminds me, you got the NFL and a commissioner, and with Roger Goodell, and how the league is regulated in a certain way. And then you have college football with the NIL and all these kids transferring from schools to schools. It's like college football needs a commissioner. They need to regulate the actual.
I thought you were
NCAA, but
I thought you were just going to say. I thought you were just going to say the cannabis industry needs a commissioner. I was like, we do need a czar.
Maybe referees would be a good start.
We need a czar. we need a cannabis czar within the government, like what they just did with David
That
Sachs.
Is well said. We need a commissioner. Well, how about we just show up with some referees?
that would be a good start. We can work our way up to.
I think it's important. The reason why we launched this is because you invited us to look. You've been a great guest in the last 6 months that you've been on. A lot of people value your opinion on a lot of the stuff that's going on the state level. I know you got a lot of expertise that's going on in Pennsylvania, among other states, and had some feedback based on this new administration with Trump. But more importantly, it's not just, the value that you bring on the show. When we attended this event at MJ Biz, you've got some of the biggest companies that are associated members within your trade association. And clearly they're seeing value pertaining to it. And that's all that I think a lot of viewers would want to know is what's the messaging going behind the scenes? What are some of the trade and advocacy groups that are getting to work that want to advance this industry? Because it's great to talk about stocks and everything, and that's what we love to do. But in the back end, you got to build the infrastructure to really understand where the industry's headed, right?
Yeah. And look, we have to fix the pipeline to this to get the capital markets working.
Yes.
Right. That's what we have to do. And building that pipeline infrastructure to get mainstream investment sort of back on track here is what we have to do. I mean, cannabis has to be a normal industry.
Right? You're right, because look what happened in Canada. Justin Trudeau won that election back in 2015 because he wanted to federally legalize cannabis, but there was nothing built underneath it after that. And now you have a very sticky situation in Canada, excise tax, among other things. And let's face it, Anthony, in the early days, how many companies are no longer around? But you want to avoid that
for the most part.
Yeah. So you want to avoid that. And this is why, are we ready for this? Some would like to think so, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done when the opportunity is presented, right?
Yeah, we're ready for this, as long as we don't wind up, in like what we did in Canada with, I guess, THC infused sausages and things of that nature, and strange regulations that happen at the federal level. I mean, look, it's a highly regulated industry, but here's the thing: there still needs to be product variety, and you can't take the joy out of the product either.
Correct.
You know, like that's the thing. I mean, the cannabis consumer, if they see that, it's going to be a problem. We got to actually have a flexible, innovative system.
But you just said a very delicate thing, that not taking the joy out of it. And we talk about cannabis being medicinal. There's a gentle equilibrium that you need to find there, especially when you want to sell it to the regulators.
It can be all of these things, right? And I think it can change over time. Look, cannabis isn't any one product per se, right? Like there's so many different segments of the market. It would not surprise me if we came back into the future and we're trying to like account for it, right? Like we've got a beverage council at ATACH, and I've been a cannabis beverage enthusiast for a long time from an advocacy standpoint. But we think that there are a number of different products in the market that we're going to have to account for. The interesting thing about cannabis is not just one thing, right? It's not just about flower. It's not just about,
beverages. It's a variety of things.
Or vaporizers, which are a really important part of the market, or not just about, a name X product, right?
Yeah.
So
we've talked about how a cannabinoid will be in every single medicine cabinet across North America within the next 5 to 10 years. And that's probably true.
If it's not already,
there
are a lot of folks do, which is why the public health and safety message is important. Look, meeting regulators where they are, it's always a constant of where it is. But again, that's a responsibility on us. If we want to have those products in the market, it's our job to prove to regulators why they should be there.
Yeah,
correct.
Well, great first segment. I think people have a better understanding of what ATACH is in addition to who you are and what the goal is of doing this every single week. But we got to start somewhere, and you got to understand where you are to get where you're going. So with that, great foundation that we've laid out here. Every Monday, 4:00, Michael Bronstein from ATACH. We will have the official name of this segment next week once we confirm and all agree with existing parties. And once that's in play, we'll have it look a little bit even fancier. But in the meantime,
3D logos spinning all over the screen. And
there you go.
Yeah. There will be spinning logos.
Before I let you go, are you getting redemption this Sunday?
Yeah, of course I'm getting redemption this Sunday. For those of you out there who don't know, I'm an insufferable Eagles fan. And I assume that's what the reference is. I mean, I get retribution every Sunday, Eagles game or not. So I hope that was a reference to the Super Bowl, because we will
just do it for all of us. Do it for America.
I know, right?
The Eagles need to beat the Chiefs for America.
Haven't you guys had enough of watching Patrick?
I hate them.
What do you?
I hate them. Everyone else's fan base hates them. Do it for us.
I
would like nothing more than have Saquon.
A lot of people hate the Eagles.
Bring back the retro.
I would like nothing more than have Saquon just rush for 300 yards and just steamroll the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's what's going to happen. I don't even know if I have to watch.
I'd love to see the retro green jerseys worn this Sunday, but I don't think they can in the playoffs.
With the wings.
Yeah, you gotta have the wings.
I love those. Do you remember the show A Different World? It came after the Cosby Show back in like the 80s, early 90s. Michael, you remember that show?
I do remember that show.
Theo was the son, and he had a friend that had those flipped up glasses, and he always wore the Randall Cunningham retro Eagles jersey. And I fell in love. That guy could be one of the best athletes in football, along with Dan Marino and a few others, but never to win a Super Bowl. Man, he was phenomenal.
Randall changed the face of the position.
He did.
It was incredible.
And man, can he throw the ball?
Oh yeah, like he would just flick the ball.
Oh,
and
he
it would go like 100 yards.
Him and Mike Vick. Mike Vick was pretty insane. But without Randall Cunningham, there is no Michael Vick.
No, it's true. Randall was number one. He was the ultimate weapon.
Randall was a Tecmo Bowl beat. Yes, he was, Guap. Tecmo Bowl. All right.
Bowl?
That's going way back. Well, I would love to come down to your house and just experience what it'd be like to sit in a living room with Eagles fans for a Super Bowl. I can't imagine.
I don't know if anyone would wish that, but you're welcome.
I'll stay where I'm at.
That's not the thing. People are not like, oh, I want to hang out with more Eagles fans. That's not usually the way it works.
Yeah, that's a unique perspective, Chad.
But you're welcome.
Do they have a jail at
They do.
Oh man. Anyway.
It's a good spot for it.
Yeah.
It's not much of a commute.
Yeah, good point. Well, listen, enjoy and best of luck as an Eagles fans, but honestly, we're cheering for you, to say the least. But yeah, we're very happy to see what you're putting together here and, pushing the narrative forward for the overall industry, because I think it's extremely important for our audience just to truly understand what you guys are doing, to give a better idea of some of the developments as to what's going on the state level and federal level within this industry.
Yeah, no, and I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to be here, and it'll be a good time.
All right. Thanks, Michael. We'll see you next Monday. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care. Well, there you go. Great guy. And we got introduced to him probably like 6-7 months ago and haven't looked back, but another great resource. But, I'll give you guys an example. Like, we're working right now to speak to a few politicians about certain things going on in state levels. And, it's always great to get a perspective from an executive from an MSO. And it always is great to hear from those kinds of people. What we're trying to do is go a step further and hear it from the source's mouth, which is actually from the actual politicians. So this is where we're going to really leverage a lot of our relationship with Michael and his team, in addition to everything that he's outlined. So expect a lot of big name guests through this partnership with them, which is going to be more beneficial for all of us here at the podcast and for you, the viewers, as we try to bring you the best information that we can possibly find with where this industry's headed in 2025. Anything you want to add? Thanks for highlighting that. It was delayed 30 days.
Trade war's over.
All right. Should see a rebound back in the market again tomorrow, but a lot of fear.
Crypto's rebounding. Apparently, crypto is directly levered to the trade war.
Yeah.
Which was just bizarre.
I was going to ask you that. Like, how do you see that playing out as far as like a crypto bill actually being passed in Congress? Like, do you see that happen?
Trump is
like, as we look at this market right now in cannabis, it's flat. It's stalling.
So let me put it to you.
Go ahead.
Let me put it in a perspective for you. World Liberty Fi, which is Donald Trump's crypto business. I think it's run by Eric and Barron. Not the meme coin, not the bullshit. His crypto company, World Liberty Fi. They've bought $471 million in Ethereum in the last couple of weeks. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
That's it. Follow the money. Trump is bullish on crypto. We're going to get, I think we're going to get crypto clarification on the staking around Ethereum and the tax environment around it, which is why I think he's been buying so much ETH.
At some point this month?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
But you're going to get it. Yeah. David Sachs is literally sitting there. They've got an AI and crypto czar. They want crypto to be, Trump has said he wants the United States to be the leader in crypto globally. So that's all you need to hear. I mean, say what you want about the man. He's done a bunch of good things since he's been in office. He's done a ton of questionable things since he's been in office, but he's done exactly what he said he was going to do the entire time.
Bara Tajuka, am I pronouncing that correctly? What was the deal? Was it secure border? Peter Navarro, I forget his title, but he's involved with the Trump administration, and he was talking about in a press conference around 1:30 this afternoon that they had already reached an agreement on a 30-day extension.
What's Guap talking about? The trade war is back on.
I think he scrolled down later and said, I'm joking around.
Oh, can't do that, Guap.
Guap, don't do that. My heart stopped for a second. But Peter Navarro was mentioning how Mexico got it, but there's still a lot of work. That was the 30-day extension, but a lot of it has to do with, it's not about trade, it's drug war. And this is the problem that, let me just finish my thought. That's just what he was reiterating about Canada as well, about how Canada was still fixated on this being a trade war, not a drug war. I'm sure Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, a little quick to, got to think these things through. Like, I don't know why he turned down what he did as far as some of the American products. And then what did he do with Elon Musk today?
He canceled a $100 million contract for Starlink for Ontario based on the news today. And then there's been Canadian, I think Jeremy Burke was talking about it, that the LCBO, which is your liquor control board,
they took off all.
They've been taking American alcohol off the shelves. Like,
yeah, that's a little quick.
Don't get me wrong, what Trump's doing is bad, but I mean that kind of just seems a little immature.
Yeah,
it's like tit for tat. Donald Trump doesn't do well with tit for tat.
Yeah, I agree. For all of you out there, this Friday, actually, big announcement. CNBC Fast Money host Tim Seymour, who hasn't been on in quite a while, but he's going to be joining us at 11 a.m. Friday morning. We're going to ask him basically on how he's preparing this space. You know, clearly there's not a lot of volume right now, but it's always good to have a sophisticated investor like him on. And we want to know more, obviously, about this ETF with the CNBS. And there's a few important questions that you want related to that, Anthony, but we're going to have him on. What's another? I thought we had another big name guest on for Wednesday. Or was it Friday that we have as well that you were working on? Wasn't there a guest on Friday? Or no, maybe not.
I got to look at the programming documents. I don't remember off the top of my head. Put me on the spot here.
I know. We were looking at another big name guest. But anyway, Tim Seymour, Friday, will be joining us. We'll keep you updated on who our guests are going to be for Friday or Wednesday at 4 o'clock. But in the meantime, trade wars extended, or I should say delayed, pushed back. No trade wars for 30 days. So all should be well. And let's see how the markets perform tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, got a good interview coming out with Peter Sack from Chicago Atlantic. We had an interview with him yesterday, or I should say this morning. That's going to be pushed out tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Peter and Chicago Atlantic. They've invested over $1.6 billion in this industry. So how are they allocating investments in this industry moving forward? And where's their opportunity on the public side, the private side? Good little interview that gives you a better understanding of what we can expect if there's reform and how people are allocating their dollars in this industry here in 2025. So that should be good. In the meantime, make sure to scan that QR code. Stay up to date every single day with our baked-in newsletter delivered to your inbox at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here Wednesday.
See you, buddy. Might have tariffs back.
Hey, everybody. Stay connected here at the latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our baked-in newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.